Did you know that you're 5 times more likely to get laid off or fired after you turn 50? I know this is true because on May 29, 2020, I was laid off. And to make things worse, if you remember, that was the year of the pandemic. In this video, I'm going to share with you 3 steps that I used to get me through one of the most difficult, challenging, frustrating, and helpless times in my life. And you can use these same 3 steps to get you through the most difficult times in your life. It was Friday, May 29, 2020. My manager asked me to stay after the meeting, which was a clue to me that something wasn't right. I had been laid off before, but this time was different. It was the pandemic. Businesses were closing. People were dying by the thousands. The economy was crashing. Nobody had any idea what was going to happen next. I was 56 years old. I had a daughter in college. I was supporting her, paying her rent, car insurance, helping her with some of her school expenses. My son had finished college about a year before, so I was still kind of helping him from time to time get on his feet. I was a single parent at the time, and I was really feeling stressed out and the pressure because I didn't have anybody else that I felt like I could lean on to get me through this time. It was one of the worst times in my life. I spent that entire weekend thinking, hoping, praying, wondering, trying to figure out what was going to happen next. How was I going to get through this? How was I going to keep a roof over my head? How was I going to keep my daughter in school and keep her expenses paid? I was wondering how I was going to stay healthy. Maybe I was going to catch COVID. Maybe my children were going to catch COVID. It was just a really difficult time. And I spent that a lot of time trying to figure it out. But by that Monday, I had come up with a plan. Whenever I find myself in difficult situations in life, challenging situations, one of the first things I do is I make an assessment. Step 1, you want to assess what got you into that particular situation. If you consider yourself to be in a mess, you have to ask yourself, how did I get here? Because if you don't ask yourself that question, whatever caused you to get there is going to happen again and again and again and again. And you'll always find yourself in that same situation if you never sit down and ask yourself, how did I get here? And I asked myself that question, how did I end up at 56 years old, laid off, unemployed, basically in a situation where I didn't have a job and I didn't have a source of income? How had I got to that point in my life? And I look back at my past, and that's what you have to do. You have to go back into your past and see what led you to that place. And for me, it was a belief system. It was a mindset. It was something that my parents had given me, my uncles, my aunts, my mentors, my school teachers, the society in general. They all gave me or led me to believe that if I worked hard, if I went to school and got good grades, I would get a job. And that was the path for me. That's what I did. I worked hard, went to school, got good grades. Well, maybe I didn't get good grades, but I did go to school and I landed a job. And that had been my whole life, just working, landing a job. And there's nothing wrong with that. For a lot of people, having a job for most of us is what sustains us and allows us to take care of ourselves and our family. But there's another side to that. When you become so dependent on the job, what's really happening is you're putting your livelihood in the hands of someone else. And for whatever reason, after you turn 50, you soon find out that that's a very delicate place to be. That's really a place you don't want to be, having your livelihood in the hands of someone else. And that's where I found myself. And also that belief, the belief that I needed to work hard and to always have a job. The most harmful thing about that belief was it took away my ability to believe in myself. I did not believe that I could create something with my own hands, with my own mind, create something that could sustain me for the rest of my life. I just didn't believe that that was possible. I didn't believe that I could do it. I had seen other people, start businesses or invest and kind of create a life of themselves where they weren't dependent on a job. But I didn't think it was possible for me. It was just one of those things I just didn't believe it because I didn't know anyone personally that had done it. And I just didn't believe that it was possible for me, and I didn't know how to achieve it. Even understanding that that's how I ended up in that position, being basically dependent upon a job and turning over my livelihood and putting it in the hands of someone else. Even though I understood that's what got me there, I also understood that that was not going to get me out of that situation. I had to come up with something else. I had made an assessment and I had figured out what was wrong, but I needed another step. I needed step 2 to take me from where I was and allow me to get myself out of that position. Step 2 in this process is commitment. You want to make a commitment to some high value skill. If you already have a high value skill, you want to commit to improving on that high value skill. And if you don't have a high value skill, then you need to commit to getting one. And what I mean by high value skill is not something that you think is valuable. It's something that the marketplace deems valuable. And if you decide to go back into the workforce, it's something that a company or an employer would find valuable, something that they're willing to pay more than a living wage for. So, for example, customer service positions, sales positions, marketing positions. People go to school to get degrees in those fields all the time, but the marketplace, companies, corporations don't see those skills as valuable. And they typically don't pay a lot of money for that, even though you might be good at what you do. If you have one of those kinds of jobs, you might be good at what you do. But once again, the marketplace, the workforce, the just in general, society just does not see that as being valuable. And that's really all that matters. It's not what you deem valuable. It's what the marketplace or other people find valuable. Because when people find something valuable, they're willing to spend their time, their money, and their energy to acquire it or to have it. And if it's not valuable, nobody's going to pay you for it. So you have to make the commitment to come up with something that, once again, the marketplace finds valuable. And for me, I had already been working on what I call instructional design. I had begun to learn more about creating e-learnings or training, online trainings. I'm sure you've probably taken some kind of course online. And I found that to be valuable, and the marketplace deemed that to be valuable. So during this period where I was out of work, I started taking courses, free courses. I picked up some free software. I basically taught myself everything that I could about instructional design and e-learning. And within a couple of months, I had created enough projects and developed enough skills that I had put together a portfolio for myself that I could, whenever or if ever the economy bounced back and companies began to hire again, I would have something of value to offer them. And that was my plan to get from where I was. But even though I had something to get me help me get back on my feet, there was still something bothering me about that. I still did not like having someone else, once again, in charge of my livelihood, determining what I could eat, when I could eat, what my family could and couldn't do. I made a vow at that time never to allow anyone else to have that level of power over me. And I wanted to take control of my financial situation. And step 3, that's what I did. So step 3 is transformation. It's about you transforming yourself into someone else, transforming your mind. Because if you transform your mind, everything else will follow. You have to transform your mind. You have to undergo a transformation. And for me, I made the decision to transform myself into an entrepreneur. So I started a digital products business. I had already, for a couple of years, had been writing books and putting a couple of them on Amazon, and they were doing okay. They were making sales, but it was nothing that would allow me to leave my 9 to 5 or that I could rely on to support me. What I realized was Amazon is a marketplace. It's really someone else's store. And when you're selling your products in someone else's store, then you pretty much have to play by somebody else's rules. And there was a limit to the topics that I could write about. The things that I want to talk about might not be open on Amazon, or might not be popular on Amazon. You could only price your books at a certain price point. There was the competition was intense. You were always looking for some new niche or some new category that you could get in, that you could dominate. It became a real struggle, a real hassle. It just became a lot of work to get a little result. I don't have anything derogatory to say about Amazon. It was a really good experience, but all of that taught me or showed me that I was really having to work too hard to basically run a business. This is when I discovered you can make 6 figures from having just one ebook. And this is really important because discovering that, I was able to basically keep all the profit for myself. I didn't have to split it with Amazon. There was no shipping. There was no printing cost, which means the price point and the profit margins would be higher. The competition would be less because I wasn't competing and trying to find a way to get on the first or the second page of Amazon. So it was a win-win for me just to create my own ebook and start my own digital product business with just me as the owner. So if you're ready to write a 6-figure ebook with stuff you already know like the back of your hand, click on the link in the description below. And before you know it, you'll have huge numbers, good news, and 5-star reviews like what you see on your screen right now. Okay, back to step 3, the transformation. Out of all the steps, the assessment, the commitment, the transformation, even though all 3 steps are equally important, transformation is the most difficult because it requires you to discard or get rid of all those old beliefs, all the old programming, all the old conditioning that you were raised on, that you were taught by your parents and your siblings and your family and your school. All of that stuff, you have to overcome all of that. And that's going to be the real challenge. And that's the challenge for most people. Changing the mindset, changing your belief system. That's one of the most difficult things that you can do in your life. But to get to where you want to be, that's actually what you have to do. Undergo that transformation. And one of the things that I discovered that helped me with my transformation process, helped me change my mindset, is that when you find yourself doing those old habits, falling into those old patterns, you have to pull yourself out. And one of the things that you can do to pull yourself out is to say to yourself, speak these words: I'm not going back to where I was before. I'm going to continue to do something different because different will bring me a change, and change is what I want. That's my ACT process: assessment, commitment, transformation. I use that process, that 3-step process, to get me through one of the most difficult and helpless times in my life. And you can use that same process to get you through whatever difficult times you find in your life. So if you're ready to stop living paycheck to paycheck, if you're ready to stop living under the fear of being fired or laid off, if you're ready to take control of your schedule, to own your time again, click on the link in the description below, and I'll see you in the next video.